Alright, time for another draft physics video presentation. Comments. Yeah, mostly JP Ritchie guy typed a whole bunch of crap, so I figured I might as well read it. I don't think he doxes me. It doesn't appear that he does. Apparently, he's got into some dopey conversation on some video with whatever, Godfrey, the troll. He's been using my personal real name in these interactions, and he claims because in some of my previous videos my real name is visible, that somehow that means my name is, free for anybody to use anywhere they want to on the internet, which is just insanely silly. Just like doxing anyone, you can do it this way by just finding some obscure reference somewhere. You find out, then you just blame the obscure reference. Not that somebody else showed you it or any of that other crap, or that somebody else did all this research. You just make it public. And it's just doxing. You're just using it again. There's no other purpose than to attack my personal security and the security of the person who lives in this house. To indirectly attack them as if that's going to create extortion on me. Like they'll get so uncomfortable that they'll kick me out of the house or something. That's the only purpose for this. It doesn't have any other purpose. And the fact that other people are endorsing it or even playing with it at all, or saying that this Godfrey character has any credibility when he has to resort to these kinds of personal evasions, besides all the grotesque lies, all over the place. I mean, it's just a constant litany of lies, misrepresentations of the actual facts, distortions, quote mining, just disgusting behavior. And the fact is, to some extent, the group of haters will endorse that. And, they can create an impression that as if they have demonstrated any of these lies to be true, and they haven't. All right, so anyway, so that's the game they're playing. Okay, you expect this. The dirty politics is the dirty politics. That's the road they've chosen, and I would argue it's because they don't have a good argument. And it sort of defines a lot of what you saw, in this whole liberal versus conservative argument. They've lost all focus on actual subjects, and it's just about, finding these little bullshit to argue about in their personal life or some other shit. They don't want to defeat the opposition's philosophy. They just want to, trip it, throw banana peels in front of it, do something to sabotage it because they can't win the argument. It's pathetic. All right. Anyway, yeah. So fact is, if I get some agreement that if I delete all the videos where accidentally my name shows up, where by no volition of mine I intend it to exist, like even should I delete the Fox News, video because Fox News used my real name, so that I have to delete the video off my channel. So what's the agreement? How many of my videos do I have to delete before you say, okay, I'll quit stealing your name and think it means something to this conversation? Especially for the physics channel. I mean, let's understand, there's absolutely no relevance my name could have to any of the content on this physics channel at all. As stated, I haven't published under my name anything. None of this is anybody's business. Doxing is a real nasty thing to be doing on the internet. Everybody should know that. It's only somebody with no argument resorts to it. It's pathetic. I mean, really, it's just pathetic. But anyway, yeah. So is that the bargain, really? I have to delete my videos to satisfy these trolls. But realistically, I don't have enough computer to go editing hour-long videos to take out one little piece and then re-render the videos. Screw it. Too much work. Too much waste of my time. I mean, how much of my time do I have to waste? Even this whole idea that I have to go on the internet to get myself unindexed by these jackass websites that dox people. I already have done that, but I mean, how much effort, how much of my time do I actually have to waste just to give people like Steve Godfrey an excuse that he won't have the excuse anymore? I think he's still going to find some excuse, because this is the only weapon he has. Lies and sabotage are all he has. He doesn't have an argument. He doesn't have philosophy. He's a fucking idiot. He's just a tear downer. He's not a. He couldn't build anything to save his life. All right. Anyway, so this idiot, this other, I don't know, these people who show up, the audience is morons. I mean, it's just kind of obvious. But anyway, what is energy? Question mark. Einstein gave up on the photon. So I was just wondering. Well, you have to do more than just wonder. So that's sort of what this whole channel demonstrates, is that just wondering isn't going to do it. It really does take a lot of work to be able to model something and make it fit all the experimental evidence that exists. And wondering is just not enough, frankly. He gave up on photons, so you're saying the same thing again. And he didn't give up. He just, gave up in the sense that he couldn't figure it out. Feynman couldn't figure it out. Lots of people couldn't figure it out. Just the way it is. They couldn't come up with a model that worked. Doesn't mean there wasn't a model. Doesn't mean there wasn't an explanation. It's like Feynman dismissed Lesage gravity, mechanical gravity, for one reason. Drag. That was the argument. And the fact is, though, is electrons and protons appear to be dragged to a halt. They appear to be victims of drag. That's why we can't make a gun that shoots electrons. They call it an electron gun, but it really doesn't shoot them very far. Anyway, so God help him with the virtual photons. So what is all this stuff? And it has absolutely nothing to do with the subject of kinetic energy and all this stuff. So this is just whatever this is. Perhaps reality is an illusion, question mark. La 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 la. No, perhaps you're an idiot. Perhaps the elemental, look, either be a religious fuck or don't. There's two sides to this argument. There really is only two sides. Religion versus reason. Okay? If you're reasonable, you understand that the elemental universe has to be simple. It can't be complex. The nature of whatever took place to make a universe was a very simple thing. It created yin and it created yang. It created black and it created white. It created on and it created off. It created matter and it created nothing. That kind of thing. There is no our force that turns into matter, blah, 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 blah. But I'm just saying, has to be, at its elemental function, has to be really, really simple. Dirt simple. And all the physics sort of indicates it is really simple. There's just a geometry to it, little simple tensions, right-hand rules, very simple rules, very simple physical behavior. And it's only complex, as Feynman would say, because there's so much of it. And so it creates sections that look highly complicated. So as Feynman uses a checkerboard example, you have a checkerboard, and it looks pretty simple when there's only, 56 squares or whatever. But make it 56 billion squares, and all of a sudden you can have areas that have a lot of complexity. All right, so the complexity emerges out of some kind of simple explanation. Now, if you're going to have bent space and virtual photons and superposition and entanglement, those aren't simple elemental functions. That doesn't make any sense at all, frankly. And so you might as well just believe a God done it, because those functions aren't going to be something that evolves, that mechanically functions and complexity emerges out of. That's already too complex a system. But whatever. I don't like metaphysics. Okay, so if you're gonna defend it in any way, allude to some sort of "ooh, the universe is mysterious," blah, blah, I'm gonna say fuck you. Sorry, I really have no time for bullshit. All right. So this racchi guy, I'll read this comment first. If you have one or two or three, but two is more likely to get a response, concise paradox questions. So I'm still posting the questions I asked on the videos because they haven't been answered. And racchi guy knows that. The answers are silly. Their answer is that if I throw a 16-pound bowling ball and then I pick up an 8-pound bowling ball, I can only throw it 0.4 faster. So even though it's half his weight, half the weight, I can only throw it 0.4 faster. Not twice as fast, 0.4 faster than the 16-pound ball was going. Just, I can only add 0.4. 0.6 is gone. I'm not capable. Is that a reasonable answer? No, it's bullshit. Does it explain anything? No, it's bullshit. Doesn't explain anything at all. Okay. The space analogy. There's 2,000 joules of energy going out this way and only 4 going that way. Gee, but somehow the spaceship keeps going in the same direction. How does that make any sense? And where's Newton's third law if we're going to sit there and say 2,000 went this way and 4 went that way? Aren't we just overtly saying Newton's third law is a meaningless mush? Again, you either believe in the kinetic energy theory and its consequences or you don't. You can't sit there and say they're both half of some magical force or thing. Neither one of them is really energy, but combined there are, or some kind of... This doesn't make any sense. So my point to you is, do you believe there have been rational responses to the questions? And if you do, please, recite me to those rational explanations, the ones that you think are reasonable explanations to the thought experiments. And the questions asked, like the train. The question is, do you really believe that a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour can only light half the number of light bulbs that a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour can light? That if we put generators on the wheel, is there some reason to believe that one can generate more power than the other, more electricity, that has more energy of some kind? Have you gotten a rational response to any of that? No. And yet you want to ask more questions. These people don't even know what a paradox is. I'll ask you personally, okay, JPG guy, but you haven't answered any of the questions. I played the Professor Lewin video where he clearly states that I have a certain amount of momentum in an object, a light object. I hit it into another object, and there's a spring between the two of them. And I end up with, this one has twice the mass. So I hit something with twice the mass, and this one ends up with 3/4 of this one's velocity, which means this one has more momentum than this one had in that direction. You understand that's a paradox, right? In the sense that all I have to do is keep 1 kilogram hits 2 kilograms, then 2 kilograms hits 4 kilograms, then 4 kilograms hits 8. I mean, I've spelled that out. Now, you think you can put that into a little concise paragraph and ask it to somebody like, well, isn't that free energy? Like, how do we avoid it being a free energy formula, a free energy demonstration? I mean, the only thing missing is letting the 2 kilograms hit 4 kilograms. Right? I mean, we know weight or momentum is pressure, and we know pressure is energy. So I'm just saying it's kind of obvious that you just keep gaining energy. So, how is that not a paradox? Do you have an explanation for either the experiment or the fact that somehow it doesn't work? Like there's some mechanical reason why I can't do exactly what I just described, just make the objects heavier and heavier and quadruple the amount of energy? I mean, energy in the form of momentum. Energy in the form of something that will compress a spring. Or do you believe, like Piro, that kinetic energy compresses springs, not momentum? Momentum doesn't have anything to do with how a spring compresses. Even though it clearly does, in the sense of when we weigh ourselves on a scale, seems pretty direct connection between momentum, that is the force of gravity, your mass, and what we read on the scale. Well, anyway, I'm just saying, look, it's fine that you propose them to the questions, but shouldn't we also just analyze why are we asking these questions to people who have no capacity to do any reasonable physics? Stephen Brose conceded he's not even interested in the specific subject. He has no broad background in understanding any physics. Okay, he's maybe an electrician, maybe. And Uh, and so his capacity to have any done any, he doesn't have any knowledge on any of this stuff. He won't even do the research on the kinetic energy theory and point out where he has some great quotes from Leibniz and great quotes from Charlotte and the other people who defended this nonsense. He won't even provide any of those great quotes explaining why it was such a great theory and why it solved all of the problems that didn't exist. I mean, you know, there's nothing, they have nothing to say because they don't know anything about physics. So what's the point of asking people who don't know anything and who are just being naysayers because I'm saying it? If somebody else was opposing the theory, they don't react. Again, I can play the clips over and over again of Professor Lewin saying things they don't agree with. Yet they don't care that he's saying things they don't agree with. You know, it doesn't bother them at all. I mean, you get it? I mean, what's the point? The point is we need physicists in this conversation. We need people who know something about physics to actually answer the questions. And that's why I went to Quora and to the physics forum. I didn't last too long there. But obviously that physics, you know, conventional physics is really obnoxious to having to defend any of its physics. Especially if they have to use something like an experimental evidence instead of just one of their little formulas. So whatever with this crap, but fine. You know, we saw what happened. I write the questions and then they pretend they don't know what the question means. I mean, you saw the AB science bullshit. Well, I wouldn't call throwing something out of a spaceship thrust. Well, what else is it? Of course it's thrust. What else is it? I mean, you know, stupid shit like that. Alright, so here he says, some questions that deal with the stuff you talk about in the video. On one hand, you said Stephen's experiments are garbage. I'm saying he has experiments that are overtly garbage, okay, in the sense that I have provided explanations that explain why it's just ferrocell crap. He did the experiment poorly. Either a poor source of creating energy or a poor way of measuring energy. And I said right from the beginning that that is the tricky part here, right? Is to find a mechanism capable of measuring energy. It's not very easy to measure the two different things, the 10-ton train and a speeding bullet. There's not really a device that can measure the energy from both of those things easily. Okay, so it's not simple. And Stephen Bro thinks it has to be simple. And it's not. You have to be careful how you do the experiment. I pointed out angular momentum and how if you push something faster, it skids, it doesn't roll. I mean, these are just facts. Okay, you're not persuaded that those are good arguments against his experiments. Fine. I mean, I can't help you. I'm saying there really are good arguments, frankly. And, you know, there are good reason to doubt what he says the experiment shows. So all I'm telling you is that he did an experiment that on its surface, it looks okay, but there has to be a reason why it's not okay because we already know free energy isn't possible. So there has to be something broken. And so you start to think about it, and I've given you two good reasons to doubt. One of them related to the Professor Lewin video where the spring is being used, and the spring is probably the reason why you have more momentum in the outcome. Now, it doesn't explain away the paradox, but it gives you some mechanical reason why the paradox is being created. And then I pointed out how the stiffness of the spring also matters, because if you want something, if something is to absorb the energy through velocity, the velocity portion, then you know, the spring has to be capable of moving at that velocity. I can't push a car 60 miles an hour. Even if I took an underdog super energy pill, I just can't move 60 miles an hour, so it just physically can't happen. So I can't push the car 60 miles an hour because I can't move 60 miles an hour. I can't make my arms move 60 miles an hour. I can't make some part move fast enough to do it. All right. And the same is true for springs. They have limitations. Okay, you can compress them too much, you can stretch them too much, and they also have a speed that's built into their constant. And the maximum speed they can produce. And if they need to give the object speed, because they can't change its mass, so the lighter object, it can only give it speed. That's the only way it can exchange the energy, is to exchange the speed portion. Well, if the spring can't go 60 miles an hour, then it can't push something 60 miles an hour. And if it needs to push it 60 miles an hour to equal the momentum, then it still is, it's just physically not going to be capable of doing it. It's not going to be able to go fast enough, quickly enough, in the time allotted to push it. It's not going to be able to produce the energy into the other object. You don't understand that explanation? So again, it's because there's not enough people who know anything about physics. I'm just saying physicists really should understand this simple explanation that when energy is being exchanged, the object doing the pushing has to be able to go the speed needed to get the energy into the other object. If the other object needs to go 60 miles an hour to absorb the momentum, I have to be able to go 60 miles an hour. And if I can't go 60 miles an hour, then it's not going to absorb the energy. So we're back to like the bowling pin example and all this other stuff. Do you disagree with some fundamental concept I've put on the table? They have no model of kinetic energy. They can't explain how it works. I can explain to you that a bowling ball has a certain amount of energy based on its mass and its velocity. And as soon as it hits a pin, it gives that first pin the maximum velocity. It can. It won't be its velocity, but it'll be close to it. All right? And so it gives away a big hunk of its its momentum, or kinetic energy, frankly, it wouldn't matter. It gives a big hunk of it away, and now it has less momentum. The bowling ball gave it away, it doesn't have it anymore, the pin now has it, and now the bowling ball is going substantially slower. And so the next pin, it can only make it go 3/4 of that speed, or half of that speed. And the next one will be half of that. And that's the process. Is there something wrong with that process? You think there's some other physics that's the reality? Well, nobody's drawing a picture of it, are they? No. Is there any diagram of it anywhere? No. So in 300 years, they can't diagram the transfer of their energy. You don't think that's a grotesque omission? They have a theory of energy, but they have no diagram of how the energy is transferred? I say that's pathetic. Anyway, on the other hand, you have said stuff close to never before in history of physics have these experiments been done. So I'm saying that we don't have any record, okay, of some pretty simple experiments. That doesn't mean they haven't been done. I'm saying there's no recorded record, because it's not to anyone's interest. We could speculate on what happens when people walk into doors. But maybe, and I'd say, okay, yeah, they don't go through the door. We say we don't really have, we might not have evidence of exactly seeing somebody walking into a door, going bang into the door and not being able to walk through the door. So the fact that we don't see the evidence doesn't mean that it's not a common enough event that everybody agrees on it. As I would have stated ahead of time, I don't think anybody would disagree that a person can throw an 8-pound bowling ball twice as fast as a 16-pound ball. Most of the bowlers believe they could. That's why the guy with the bowling channel was actually suggesting to people, maybe you should practice with an 8-pound ball to take advantage of this physics. I mean, his assumption is, yeah, sure, it's easy to throw an 8-pound ball twice as fast. His assumption isn't that, oh no, you can only do 0.4. You get me? I mean, some of these arguments, I shouldn't have to even argue. They're such common knowledge. So you're saying that I need to produce this counter evidence. They don't have to produce any evidence. So they have zero evidence demonstrating this is a physical fact. And all they have is Stephen Bro's experiment. And you say it's so pristine that, we have to accept it. And I'm saying, well, wouldn't the first thing we would do is say, well, maybe we ought to pick at that experiment and see if it's worth us saying, now we have a whole new theory to consider? Maybe you made a mistake. Yeah, it seems likely. All right, until Stephen did them. To me, if they are actual firsts, so what does that even mean, actual? To me, that's the thing at question. Is it really actual? Is it an actual demonstration of something real? Just like as Ken Wheeler's claim that light is bent by a magnet because I put a magnet by a ferrocell and clearly light looks like it's bent. Does that mean the magnet bent light? I would argue, of course, it didn't. Or even so, To me, if they are actual firsts, or even so extremely rare, you can't find any other experiments. So again, it's a pretty simple experiment, right? I mean, I'm just going based on my intuitive experience in reality of every time I've encountered springs. I never had this impression that springs were incapable of transferring momentum to objects. That a lighter object couldn't receive the momentum the spring had. Um, Unless it was lighter than the spring, frankly. That in and of itself should be appreciated. I'm just saying, what's to appreciate here? There's all kinds of pseudoscientists on the internet saying they have free energy. So go look under free energy and you'll see millions of views for clearly crap science, crap physics, crap demonstrations. Now, a lot of them are overt fraud, okay? But some of them are well-hidden frauds, okay? But they're still frauds. So what's the difference between Stephen Bro's experiment? Why is it so believable as a physical fact, when again it might be as simple as he used too weak a spring? The phrase "an experimental first" is usually used as praise. And again, it would be, and it will be, if he's right? If he's right, he's proven something that all the other physicists don't know. That springs don't conserve momentum. Because they all think they do. Okay, because I guess they might not be able to imagine where it goes if it doesn't go into the object. It creates sort of a problem, then what happens to the energy? Okay, you are admitting no one else has taken the time to try them. So this is kind of blah, blah, blah. I haven't admitted anything, and I've argued that it seems kind of ridiculous that we have a 300-year-old theory for which they've provided no experimental evidence. So that's what I've said, and you're kind of perverting that into this, they never bothered trying something. I don't think this is a matter of trying something. The only thing they want to do is something that confirms what they want to find. I am sure Madame Chartelet did other experiments, and they didn't confirm what she wanted to demonstrate. And the clay did. And that's the problem. The problem is people's biases. Okay. And there is no denying he has spent hours and hours and hours of time both doing the experiments and the videos. And frankly, I don't know if that's hours and hours and hours. Let's just concede the point. His ambitions and his, I'm trying to think, the Yoda statement. There is no try. There's just do or do not do. Okay, so it's really not about trying. And again, I would argue in the context of where he did so little research into the methods that he's using to try to extract energy and produce energy, that it's not my fault that the hours and hours are kind of wasted if he's not going to pay attention to any of these important details. Okay, and just calls them somebody else's denial because they require the evidence to be in a better form than he's producing, to eliminate the reasonable doubt. Okay, along with lending his face and name to them. People, that's their choice, so to speak. Now, again, I don't think I would on the internet do anything challenging anybody, in this atmosphere of where it can come home to roost. People will make it personal, and they will get into your personal business, and that's dangerous as fuck, in my opinion. But fine, okay, maybe England isn't like that yet, but certainly like that here in America, and I think everybody knows it. That you got to be damn careful what you say in your front yard, because your neighbors might burn your house down. I mean, it's a fact. So don't you, on some level, appreciate the effort? I don't. You really haven't been following along at all, right? Every one of his videos is a stinking pile of disgusting lies. Why the fuck would I appreciate anything this stupid lying sack of dirty, smelly old shit, this piece of crap is doing? He's quote mining. He's taking everything out of context, claiming he's won some argument or he proved something, and it's all bullshit, frankly. All of it is bullshit. So fuck him and his effort. His effort to do what? Again, he's pointed out he doesn't care about the theory. He had no interest in this subject. The only reason he's making any effort is to try to prove me wrong. He's not trying to prove a scientific fact, because as I pointed out, if he did want to prove a scientific fact, he'd take on Professor Lewin. He'd take on Physics Girl. He'd take on these people who are saying things directly in contradiction to what he believes. And yet he's not doing any of that. So he's clearly not doing it for the science. He's doing it to waste my time, okay, having to go through this process of proving his pseudo-scientific shit to be exactly that, pseudo-scientific shit. Now, I've proven half of his experiments are obvious garbage, and the other ones aren't quite as obvious garbage. That would be my argument to you. It's just not quite as obvious, but they're still garbage. Alright, because literally no one else is even bothering. Well, no one else knows that there's a controversy, frankly. Everybody else has accepted the wave-particle duality. So do you believe there's a momentum, kinetic energy duality? They somehow coexist. When you want to use momentum, it's okay, and when you want to use kinetic energy, it's okay, and the physical mechanics of the universe can completely and radically change depending on what thing you're trying to do. You can just make the model completely different, and it's okay. You think that makes any sense at all? Alright, anyway. And the experiments. Right, well, we know that the experiments are insanely redundant. Every college does exactly the same experiment. I mean, just about, right? As I pointed out, as I proved, as I showed in videos, the 1960 videos made by MIT are exact duplications of the experiments in Professor Lewin's lectures. Exact duplications, even to the point of having a monkey, fall and shooting it. I mean, silly, stupid, they're exact duplications. So they engineer the experiment to provide the impression and engineer it to give the result they want to demonstrate. But is it honest? Again, is it honest when Professor Lewin says, well, I want to take these two completely elastic objects, solid aluminum, right? So they're already elastic. But I have to make them elastic by putting a spring on them. Right? And you don't see any... That sounds like a gimmick. Why? What are the springs there for? You already have two elastic objects. Why are you putting a spring on them? And to your ideas. Let's see. Are even bothering. And the experiments to cite their flaws. So you don't think the flaws are really important. The flaws are everything. Flawed experiments are, again, like the Eddington experiment. You don't think it's a flawed experiment. He was hoping to get 10,000 stars in the image. He got 1,000. So he got 10% of the quality he was hoping for. And he's already first trying to do a very difficult thing. So he's trying to do something very difficult, even with perfect results. Difficult experiment. You got to be meticulously careful. And he got 10% of the quality. And you think, oh yeah, despite the flaws, who cares? A few flaws. And I'm saying that a few flaws makes all the difference. All right, generate eyes and ears to the conversation and to your ideas. So where do you have any evidence of that? That Stephen Bro's crappy experiments are generating any positive energy in this conversation? All I see is a bunch of people making excuses for even like the first video where he claims all these experiments are proving me wrong when the one I asked him to do proved me right. Okay, and he still hasn't proven anything wrong with that experiment beyond his assertion that somehow it wasn't twice the energy as Professor Lewin would think. That the faster object didn't leave with twice the momentum. Twice the velocity as conservation of momentum requires. Whatever. So on a very practical level, that should matter. Again, what have we seen on his videos? They're just pwn videos, and the subject really doesn't provide opportunity for any of that. So he's just made up these fake lies that I promised him money, that in some way I cheated him, or I did this, or I did that. And all this is about is the fact that I don't think Asperger's is a physical disease. I don't think it's a physical break in your brain function. I think it's a philosophical concept, like I don't want to. It's the I don't want to syndrome. Life is a pain in the ass. Well, I don't want it to be. I just want to read comic books and eat candy. Okay, that's Asperger's. Asperger's is I don't want to. Yeah, I have that too. I'm sure everybody's a little bit Asperger's. They really don't want to. Lots of stuff you have to do in your life you really don't want to. I don't want to delete my videos because some asshole troll thinks it gives him the right to publish my name. I mean, I don't want to. Okay, so there, I have Asperger's because I don't want to. All right. Regarding the theory of the theory, regarding the history of the theory. Oh, here, good. Let me hear this part. I'm not sure what you're looking for as a response to saying the history is bad. I'm saying it's bad science. Will you point out the good science in the history? So show me where, when Leibniz was arguing for mv squared, which is twice as much energy as 1/2 mv squared, obviously, an answer that's way the fuck off, 100% off. Why was he making good arguments? When he was arguing for, the truth is 200 joules, he's arguing for 400 joules. I'm just saying, why is that a good history? His argument was completely for religious reasons. He opposed Newton. He didn't oppose Newton because momentum, he said, I can prove momentum doesn't give the right answers. No, his argument was Newton's physics is too austere. It doesn't have enough God stuff in it. There's no monads and there's no solitons, so there's no God in there. That was his argument. You don't think that's a bad scientific history for a theory? And then again, I pointed out all the woman had was clay experiments. And Bro couldn't even duplicate her clay experiments because she probably engineered them. Just the right kind of clay, just the right temperature. Right? So you don't think that's a bad history? I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a really bad history. If Newton's motives were religious, so obviously Newton's motives weren't religious. Newton observed things in the universe and documented what happens. He didn't explain why it happens. He just explained what happens. Hypothetically, would you render his gravity work suspect? So again, Newton didn't say, I'm overtly attacking a model of the universe because it's not religious enough. Leibniz said that. Leibniz said, I'm deliberately attacking Newton's physics because it's not religious enough. You can't see the difference between those two after all of these times I've said it? And you're going to play this game that there isn't, obviously, the history isn't garbage? I've asked for one reference from the historical record where they made a good argument, pointing out how it must be kinetic energy because here's the experiment that proves it. They don't have such an experiment. You don't think that's a huge miss? To first show where Newton gets the wrong answer, wouldn't that be the first step? Show where momentum gets a wrong answer and show where kinetic energy is the right answer with an experiment that actually proves it. Fuck. There is never going to come a point when people say CE is wrong because people behind the formation of the theory, CE, I have to figure out what the hell that is religious motivations. CE is wrong because people behind it, the formation of the theory, had religious motivations. So I don't know what CE is, so whatever. If a theory of weather had religious origins, but the math behind the theory was solid to the point it couldn't be summarily dismissed. And obviously, there you go. The evidence would speak for itself. Where's the evidence of kinetic energy theorem? So where did it predict accurately? Where's it been shown? Where's the prediction actually produced a result? Show me kinetic energy theory navigating a spaceship somewhere. Show me it used somewhere where they can't just make up a fake answer. Show me when the answer matters to an outcome where kinetic energy is used and gets right answers. I don't see where the motivations of the authors of said theory would render it null and void. If there's no other evidence besides their motivations, so you don't really pay any attention, do you? I mean, you don't know anything about it, right? You didn't do any of the research and read all that horseshit that I've read. Go through it, and you'll see there's nothing there. There's no reasoned argument why kinetic energy must be believed. There's no reasoning, no explanation for this is where momentum gets this terribly stupid answer. It doesn't exist. And they don't even deal with the simple fact that Newton's third law has to go in the toilet. Okay, if you're going to believe in kinetic energy. Alright, anyway. So he's doing the CE thing. Why does he think CE? I'm supposed to automatically know what a CE is. It's not like it's quantum, theory, where you're using QM, quantum mechanics. What's CE mean? What the fuck? Christian Enlightenment? What is it? CE. Fuck. CE is not an unfounded as, say, creationism. So what is CE? It's even comparable to it? It says you. I'm having this doubt that CE is anything worth supporting. There's no math behind creationism. And again, what is math? Again, math is a formulation of what you observe, for fuck's sake. There's nothing special about math, okay? Most of it doesn't have anything to do with predicting an outcome as a product of the math. Again, they already knew the speed of light before Maxwell did his little la 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 la, guess what? This is the speed of light. No, they already knew it. They already had a pretty good idea. Anyway, speaking of weather, there's a lot of disagreement among climate scientists on various weather theories. So again, why are you making these comparisons to these things when, again, this is so elemental to the physics? I mean, this isn't that complicated to prove. Now, Stephen Bro's done, various experiments poorly, but the point would be is it really isn't that hard to actually see how many joules of energy a bullet has. Shoot it into water and see how much the temperature goes up. And then push 2 kilograms into some water and see how much the temperature goes up, or some kind of method like that. We can devise these experiments. All right, so this isn't exactly anything like trying to duplicate weather outcomes. Anyway, I presented your concerns regarding the history to Piro. I've tried to get people to acknowledge that what you're saying. Well, you just said I didn't say it pretty much. So you probably shouldn't do that, because you're just denying that the point is they have no physical evidence in the record. There's no physical evidence besides clay experiments in the record. You understand? There's no experiments demonstrating where kinetic energy saved the day. We would have gotten a wrong answer if kinetic energy theory didn't save the day. Let's say they concede there were religious origins, then that would be reason to say, now let's say, well, if we have we have bad motivations, then we can look at, well, what's the product? Now maybe we ought to analyze the evidence. And then when you go to analyze the evidence, you realize there isn't any. Okay, what then? So you ask that with a question. Well, I guess what then is, doesn't that mean the evidence should be scrutinized? And the fact that there is no evidence on the table, all there was the religious argument. Okay, the lawyer walked in, the lawyer said, the guy is guilty. I say so because I don't like him. We find out that he's just saying that because he doesn't like him, okay? He's not saying Newton is wrong for a good reason. He's saying it for a really stupid reason. So now the argument is, well, let's look at the evidence he has. There's none on the table. You get it? If there's no evidence on the table, then all we have is a bad motive and no evidence. Well, that's a really lousy reason to believe in something, isn't it? Fuck. All right. Even if they do, it won't create widespread reevaluation of CE's value. So I don't. What the hell is CE? What the hell is that? Anyway, because they just see it as a theory of energy backed up by mass. I guess he's saying kinetic energy is CE. I don't know. Makes no sense to me. And they say experimental evidence. Yeah, again, so the point is, and they say experimental evidence. Isn't evidence the most important thing you could possibly have in this trial of the truth? We're putting on trial. What is the truth? Shouldn't what's on the evidence table be the most important thing? Like how the lawyers are dressed, who cares? What the lawyers say about, blah, 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 that shouldn't matter. The evidence should be doing the loudest speaking. And again, I pointed out reasons why there is reason to doubt the presentation provided by the expert, Stephen Brozo. Okay, yeah, his expert testimony may not be what you think it is. Finally, regarding paradox issue, now you've seen my confront Piro and others with your paradox concerns, and you've seen their responses. Did I or didn't I? Isn't their responses, I'm pretending there's no paradox? I mean, where did they deal with the one single sentence I spoke, which was both theories? If you keep both theories, then you either have a momentum paradox, free momentum, or you have free kinetic energy. If you accept momentum, then you have free kinetic energy. So there is a real inescapable paradox in trying to force these two things to be real things. They both can't have any meaning. Okay, one of them has to be complete nonsense and one of them has to be the absolute truth. There's just no room for any division of their realities. Okay. They claim both theories can coexist, and they claim it with no evidence, no reasoning, no anything to back it up. There's no coexistence. Every single time you conserve kinetic energy, you destroy momentum, and when you conserve kinetic energy, you destroy. When you conserve momentum, you destroy kinetic energy. No conservation. So what are you talking about? Obviously, why should I respect that answer? I say so. It doesn't matter, because I say so. If such coexistence was such an overt insult to logic, wouldn't have some sci-fi authors have picked up on it by now and used it in fiction the way they use stuff like many worlds? You would think, frankly. I don't want to keep making obvious arguments to you, but you would think somebody would figure out that bent space is a vacuous answer. There's no energy. There's no mechanism. It's pathetic. It's pathetically unphysics. There's no physics. There's just a magical thing. The electron says, oh, this space is bent. I must roll down the space bending thing. It's a silly answer. It's my fault that you fall for silly answers. So the fact that no one's figured out that kinetic energy and momentum don't coexist very well, can't I just show it in the Professor Lewin video? Didn't I just show it, essentially? When I showed him, remember when he's turning off the vacuum cleaners, they're for the air track, and he starts saying, well, kinetic energy is blah, blah, blah. He's just rambling because he's trying to say there was kinetic energy before and then after, momentum. Yeah, it didn't make any sense because they never tried to combine the two things. They always keep them separate from each other in terms of how they progress a thought. And it's just like the game they play with the single slit and the double slit. I already made these comparisons. So you're sort of just playing games here to pretend that it's my fault that they're too stupid. I'm just saying, if you're going to tell me the paradox problem doesn't exist, then show me how it doesn't exist. I mean, I made it so simple. Okay? I mean, if you believe kinetic energy is conserved, then you end up with a scenario where you just hit heavy objects into a spring and then replace them with a light object, and you make more energy, more momentum, let's say. And then if you believe in kinetic energy, I just do the opposite, and I end up creating free momentum. You tell me how that can make sense. All right, anyway, are you the only one to push the paradox idea? I looked at, we've already showed you that there's 2 or 3 other people that have brought this up in the past, and all they've gotten is this same kind of closed door. Nobody wants to have the conversation. Is there any evidence they want to have the conversation? Did they let me have the conversation on Quora? Did they address the questions? And then they just, whatever they do, you know, they made my account invisible, meaningless. So my question couldn't get answered by anybody because no one saw it. So what do you want me to say? You think the question the paradox has been answered by someone. Who's answered the question? Who's pointed out how it doesn't create a paradox, and this is why? That it doesn't make free momentum. Conserving kinetic energy makes free momentum. Do you have some way of denying that as a physical fact? Anyway, I'm asking why others aren't seeing it. And again, I don't have to make others see it. I'm asking you, do you understand? Have I drawn it enough times on the blackboard for you to understand there's a paradox? Fuck. If it is in fact so blatant. So again, with your questioning. So you really want me to have to go over it again? I mean, really? I mean, I've referenced the Professor Lewin video twice as actual playing it, and I've talked about it numerous times. I made a video just on that one subject. I just said, does anyone have an answer? Why isn't this perpetual energy or free energy? Momentum's real. There's no denying it's real. So if I'm making something have more momentum, I'm making something that's going to affect the universe by putting more pressure on things. It's just undeniable. It's weight. It's the same as me lifting water higher in the gravity. If I'm making more momentum, it's the same thing as lifting something higher in gravity. It's undeniable energy. Anyway, so fundamentally obvious, question mark. So again, you're the one who's tripping. So you're going to ask me, where are they tripping? Where are you tripping? Where didn't you get the argument? I mean, I made it so many times and you still don't understand the paradox. I don't know what I can say. I mean, you don't understand the paradox. There's a certain amount of energy in something, okay? I have an object and it's moving. It has a certain amount of energy in it. Okay, based on mass and velocity. And so I bang it into something, and this object now has more energy in it, more momentum. So this is all I did. I just threw this object with momentum. I put the necessary to make 100 joules of energy. It has 100 joules. It bangs into this and it leaves with 130. How is that not free energy? Okay, I don't know. All right, where are blah, 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 blah. If it's not for lack of lots of discussion in the physics community. All right, and look how difficult it is. I'm offering $2,000 to ask these questions to a physicist, and they won't take the money. I'm offering them $2,000 just to play one of my less than perfect little videos, the little 15-minute ones. I mean, the one on kinetic energy doesn't even go into all these paradoxes. It just deals with the two-train analogy. And they won't do it. So you're just ignoring the fact that I'm offering them money to debunk me, $2,000, and you don't think that's, compelling, that they would love to take that opportunity. These are people who debunk flat earthers. I mean, their whole channel is debunking people. That's what they do. They debunk people. AB Science debunks Ken Wheeler. And before that, flat earthers. His last video was what? A mirror of a flat earth video. This is what he likes doing, is debunking the pseudoscientist. Why won't he let me pay him to do it to me? Okay. The number of videos, forums, and even before forums, the entire unmoderated Usenet forums of the late 90s. So now you're going to go back to whatever. Like somehow if it's unmoderated, it's a rational conversation. I don't think so. Saying that having everything in a conversation means the conversation was rational is pretty silly logic in my opinion. And early 2000s. Wouldn't this paradox, if it were so clearly there? Well, again, I pointed out there are other people who have brought this up and gotten ignored. And that's just a simple fact. I showed the links to the video, to the other people who wrote papers on this subject. Now, other people haven't made videos on it. But now I have. So I was the first to make a video on it. Okay. But this argument certainly wasn't dead. It was just as close as you can get to dead, unfortunately. But there have been a few people that have figured out the math makes no sense. There are no experiments. The whole thing is nonsense. Have been discussed by any of the thousands of amateur dissident physicists. And again, I've already pointed out how most of them have agendas, right? Their agenda isn't to find the truth. Their agenda is to prove their particular favorite unicorn created the universe. Okay, most of the dissident theories are magical theories, like the electric universe and all the other people. Those are people motivated by turning physics into God. Okay, they're trying to turn the science back into a religion. So obviously, the vast majority of them have no sincere effort to find a more elemental theory of the universe. They're trying to find a more godlike theory. They're doing what Leibniz was doing. They're not really trying to find the truth. Let's see, maybe I haven't looked enough, but I'm assuming you have searched for others reaching your conclusions. Yeah, like I said, I gave the links to the guy who wrote, he has a whole website, a whole bunch of different arguments. Now, he doesn't make the argument from paradox, and he doesn't make the argument that I'm making, but he certainly does ridicule the math and does point out certain things. They're not my arguments, but they're his arguments. And some of them, I would argue, are quite obviously valid. I'm just saying you can't be the only one. And I didn't say I was the only one. I think I'm the only one currently. I mean, the only other stuff I found is at least 10 years old, some of it 20. Even you must think you can't be the only one to question the paradox. Why can't I be the only one? Who has a rational particle theory of gravity? No one. Who has a rational theory? Who's explained what a photon is better than I have? Again, it's a 15-minute video. If you've watched the video, it completely annihilates the double slit experiment. It completely reveals all of the secrets, okay? I mean, I pull the curtain back. I show you the wizard. It's over, okay? The wave theory is rubbish. Yeah, no one else did that. I did it. All right, edit. When you say above, it's not for lack of discussion. When I say above, it's not for lack of discussion, I don't mean discussion of the paradox specifically, but rather discussions of all the kinds of physics theories generally. I don't even know what that means. Even crazy ones, especially ones involving the word paradox. I guess I'll have to read this sentence. I didn't think it was that complicated. Even if you must think you can't be the only one to question the paradox, I'm the only one I've heard reference these arguments as paradoxical, pointing out that, look, clearly when they were arguing kinetic energy against momentum, when the two sides were arguing, both sides were attacking the other side as being a free energy theory. So Leibniz was arguing, your theory is free energy, because it made too much kinetic energy. And clearly the other side was saying, your theory is free energy, because obviously it made way too much momentum. So it's like they knew there was a paradox in the sense that from their perspectives as proponents of one or the other. I'm just saying that if you're going to sit there and say both of them are real concepts, then you're stuck with both paradoxes. You don't eliminate the paradoxes, you just say it's okay to have them. You're just ignoring the subject, frankly, which is that it's paradoxical. Well, whatever. So I don't know what you're talking about here. Let's see. When I say above, it's not for lack of discussion. Okay, where did you say that above? I have been discussed. Okay. If it were so clearly there, wouldn't this paradox, if it were so clearly there, have been discussed by any of the thousands of amateur dissident physicists? So again, you're saying that dissident physicists have conversations in some sort of rational realm, first off. And again, it's not the dissidents who brought up paradoxes, it's the actual proponents of these two theories in the history. So in the 1700s, they would argue, yours is a free energy theory. Leibniz was against free energy, and he was against perpetual motion. Okay? But the fact is that he was claiming the other side's was a free energy formula because he believed in kinetic energy. And the other side, because they believed in momentum, clearly stated yours is a free energy theory. Because if I accept your assumptions of energy values, I can't help but have a problem because a certain momentum in and I get more energy out. If I use your numbers, I get answers that don't match because I don't know I can only throw a bowling ball 0.4. Until you prove I can only throw the bowling ball 0.4 faster, you haven't demonstrated how it takes more energy to throw an 8-pound ball twice as fast. Because Professor Lewin won't say it takes more energy to throw an 8-pound ball twice as fast. Professor Lewin will say if I make a device that throws bowling balls, it's going to obey momentum. Okay, it's not going to take twice as much energy to throw the 8-pound ball twice as fast because it's the same momentum. Shit. What's the point? Well, anyway, the point is this is just what you have to endure in this process. So, Richie Guy, you ought to just get off the playing your game of walking a fence here and just, either you are going to acknowledge that my points haven't been addressed, or you're going to play this game that, okay, yeah, they've provided these great answers, that how come you're totally unresponsive to their great answers? Well, if you want to show me their great answer, I'll respond to it. Show me their accusation that you think I haven't defended. Show me the thing they've said that seems to have great credibility to you. So because Stephen Bro says, I know springs, and therefore I couldn't have made a mistake by using too weak a spring in the experiment, you're convinced because he gave you some kind of great argument why his spring was the right spring. Did he do you any of that? No. So anyway, moving on. Yeah, that's all I can do. Endeavor to persevere, Gary. So yeah, as to composing new questions, again, I haven't had the ones I already posed answered, and I just don't know if I can describe the paradox in 2 sentences. I just don't know if that's enough. How, what context the question can be understood in. Do I have to first explain that there are these 2 theories? They both claim to be telling you how much capacity to change the universe you have, how much capacity to give other objects energy you have. They're both making an explicit claim about that capacity, and the answers they give are completely different. They get extraordinarily uneven to the point where, the bullet versus the recoil of the gun. The claim that the bullet can do 2,000 joules of energy while the recoil of the gun can only do 4. And yet we're supposed to believe equal and opposite reaction. Well, that's clearly nothing equal and opposite about it. Clearly. All right. I mean, you see these conversations. Like I said, you're saying, why isn't there some obvious confusion? The bowling analogy was a pretty good example, right? Because the bowling instructor actually believes the physicist. He actually believed the physicist who wrote in the book that the 8-pound ball has twice the energy, going twice as fast. And the physicist clearly had the belief that the 8-pound ball is easy to throw twice as fast. It's not a hard thing to do. So that's clearly the argument he made. Clearly the bowling instructor completely believed the argument. And clearly he stated to his bowlers, yeah, well, maybe you should try to get that lighter ball to work. Maybe you should try to learn how to throw it right. Because, yeah, you're getting free energy, baby. I mean, that was clearly the argument. So, I pointed out how when physics girl says I 100% transferred the momentum, and yet I lost half the energy, you got to be able to understand how that's impossible, right? If I interact with something and cause heat or cause other matter to move, I have to give away my momentum to do that. I can't make the other things happen without me giving them my energy. I can't do both. I can't give it away and then give it away again. I can only give it away once. If I give it away and it's going in that direction, right? As I've explained, if I give it away going forward, I win. But if I give it away in any other direction, I can't give it away again. It's not possible. And you think that, that paradox is glaring. Millions, 50, 70, 100,000 people maybe by now have watched that video. And not one of those 100,000 people could say, you really can't say that it makes sense. You can't say there was a huge amount of deformation and you lost half the energy when none of that was in the experiment. And certainly if I do the experiment a different way where I just drop the weight on the car, clearly there's no indication of any of this reduction of its energy. It's not visible in any way whatever. The velocity is completely what you would expect. It's half of what it was. The weight is twice, the velocity is half. Where's the problem? Where did I lose half the energy? I didn't lose half the energy. I just changed its shape. Instead of being, more velocity and less mass, it's more mass and less velocity. Same volume of energy. I did the whole volume explanations. I mean, you don't think the volume argument is a good argument? That energy just happens to be in the universe in volumes? Like the little tiniest quanta in the universe goes very fast, the speed of light. So it has a very, very narrow base, but a very tall volume, And then the slowest piece of matter has a very, very big mass, but a very tiny velocity, right? Same volumes. You don't get that argument? Yeah, whatever. Play your whatever fence sitter game here, and so you're basically saying here, basically there's something about their argument that's compelling to you, and somehow I need to say more or do more, and that's fine. That can be your opinion, but I don't think you're going to back it up with any explanation. So maybe you should answer my questions. Maybe you should answer the questions on the website and then answer the paradox question, of how it's possible for kinetic energy and momentum to both be right and both constantly create free momentum or free kinetic energy. All right. Yeah, enough said. Irritating. But, it's a world full of